Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Saturday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, today I want to talk a little bit about singer from One Direction, Liam Payne. Uh, Initially, I wasn't going to talk about him. I came across his story. We all know he unfortunately lost his life from a balcony in Argentina, 3 floors down. I wasn't going to talk about him. I'm a 58-year-old guy, and I've heard One Direction. I can't say I can name any of their songs. I didn't up until this last week. I didn't really know who Liam Payne was. If you watch my channel, usually I'll pick a story. I'll pick a topic, an article to talk about, where I can relate to it, where I could share some of my experiences, something, firsthand, some opinions, something I could relate to the story. And initially, I didn't see anything I could relate to, really. It seemed like he did have some kind of intoxication and maybe some depression issues. And I just didn't really see any connection, anything I could contribute to the story. Until I came across an article, and that article is right down below, and you guys could check it out. It's right in the video description. And it's got pictures from his hotel room now, and the blood tests and all the autopsy and everything hasn't come back yet, but the stuff they found in the hotel room, they're talking about hallucinogenic substances, something called crystal, Cristol, I believe how it's spelled. I've never heard of this before. And I started looking at this story, his issues of supposedly of depression, and obviously, from what I could see, drug use in that hotel room. And it reminded me of stuff I've been through, and I decided to talk about this. Don't mistake this video. This is not glamorizing. Some of the stuff I'm going to say might sound fantastical in an interesting way, but don't get me wrong. The purpose of this video is not to glorify drugs. I've been clean and sober. I'm coming up. Wednesday is my 18th anniversary. 18 years clean and sober. Initially, I started using weed in high school, before high school. And then late into high school in the 80s, early 80s, I graduated in 84. I started using hallucinogenic substances like LSD. I actually used LSD probably over 100 times. I actually wrote a 20-page term paper on LSD for it. I was in advanced classes in high school, believe it or not. And I did a 20-page term paper on Timothy Leary and LSD while I was using it. Later on, I got into cocaine, rock, selling, dealing, and eventually heroin and OxyContin in my 30s. And as you can imagine, my life went to hell. I want to talk about what I know about similar substances, the substances that I use, hallucinogenic substances. Like I said, back in the 80s, these designer drugs weren't around, but from what I understand, they're very similar to the stuff I used. And the more I thought about this, the more I could understand what I think Liam Payne might have gone through. I would never touch this stuff again. Even when I later on in my 20s and 30s, I became a full-blown addict, I would have never touched hallucinogens ever again. I just used them for a time in I'd say my late teens to mid 20s. And I don't know how to describe this to you. It kind of, to me, it's kind of like putting super nitro high octane gas into a Pinto or I don't know, what's a modern car, a Honda. It'll give you like a fantastic run down the quarter mile, but it'll blow apart the engine. That's kind of how I relate these substances. I'm going to tell you about a story where I used my mind to do something where I could have never done that in a million years. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I'm not glamorizing this. But it had, along with all drugs, it had its payback. And it took a lot out of me. I mean, it took days where I didn't feel normal. There was times where I didn't think I was ever going to be sane again. if you've never used this kind of drug, there's a quote that I've heard. If you say you've only used alcohol, God bless you. But trying to describe what hallucinogens are to somebody that's never used them, this is a quote I heard. It's like trying to describe a rainbow to a person who's never seen, who's been blind since birth. You can't explain it. And some of the stuff I went through, I don't doubt that. What I found with these drugs is it kind of, you have your conscious and your subconscious, right? I'm not a psychologist or anything, but it would tear down that barrier. And I remember after I had started using this, my friends that also want to use this for the first time, I would warn them. I would tell them, if you have any bad experiences, stuff, family issues, stuff with your girlfriend, bad experiences that you put way back in the back of your head, and most of us do, but I mean some heavy duty stuff that you're not talking about, and you're normal, you're happy every day, but you're hiding, you got some really deep, dark stuff in the back of your head. And I tell them, do not use this. Do not use these drugs, because when you use these, that barrier comes down and this stuff comes right to the forefront. That stuff that from when you were 5 years old, where you saw something that scarred you for life and you hid it, that's going to come right back and it's going to sit right in the front of your mind, where you can't ignore it. I had friends that overdosed or just freaked out on this stuff before. And the thing is, you had back in my day, you had to ride this out. If we took the person to the hospital, they would strap the person down like a 4-point strap, arms and legs, chest strapped to the bed. And these substances, they couldn't give them anything to knock them out. The person would have to ride out the bad trip for 12 hours of just freaking out. And a lot of times these people did not go back to normal. I have this one friend I'm going to tell you about. I might as well start right there. I never had a really what you call a bad trip, but this one time there was 4 of us. We're about maybe in our 20s, early 20s. And we took a ride at night up into the woods here in Connecticut to a mountain, Mount Mohawk, where they go skiing. And it was all dark, there's no street lights or anything like that. And we're driving our car up the mountain and we're all tripping. And I had my one friend in the back seat, Michael. These are all 3 of my best friends. And he was quiet the whole time. The rest of us are laughing and joking around. And he was just totally quiet. And all of a sudden, at one point, he just opens the door. He jumps out and he just runs into the woods. And we're talking, the deep woods here in Connecticut. I mean, there's nothing for miles, and it's like, October, November. It's freezing. It's dark out. And this guy just disappears into the woods. And we spent the whole night looking for him. We eventually found him. He came wandering out of the woods. This is a completely true story. And he wasn't talking. The rest of the night, he did not talk. He just had this look of fear on his face. Swear to God. Now, here's the weird thing. Back at this time, he used to be very anti-religion. He would see people we knew from high school, like the really, the holy rollers from high school, the guys in high school that carry around Bibles and, and preach and stuff. And he really had a problem with them. He would make fun of them. What do you think? You believe in Santa Claus too? He was that kind of guy. This is a totally true story. After that night, he became ultra religious. I swear to God, he started carrying around a Bible. Today, he is a minister. Last I knew, he was looking to buy a church. I mean, this could be, for all I know, this could have been a good turn in his life. I don't know. But that night changed him profoundly. He became the person that he seemed to mock. And now, 30, 40 years later, he's a reverend. He's still that guy. They changed him forever. This is, and if any of my friends, people that know me from back then, a lot of them watch my videos. I mean, they'll look in the comments if you guys are watching this. They know this is a true story. I wouldn't hallucinate when I took these drugs, but it would change your perception of things. I remember a sunny day, we're all at the park, same bunch of guys, and and it was just such a happy, you felt giddy. And I remember looking at moss, on the ground, green moss, and it was the greenest I had ever seen. Ever since that day, I've never seen that color again. I mean, the drugs were spectacular in this way, where they would open your perceptions of things. So you would see things that that you never thought you'd see. But it took a toll. It did. It drained me, and I don't know if I ever went back to normal either. I'm going to tell you another story. This is fantastic. And this is a completely true story. And if there's people that know me watching my video, I want them to comment down below. One of these nights in my early 20s, I had been using these drugs, and I came home. I was living with my mother. I was still living at home, and it was in December. And I didn't recognize my house as I was walking up the street. I mean, not in a drunken way. I mean, I looked right at my house, and it just changed. It didn't look like the house I lived in. It changed before my eyes. Eventually, I talked myself into going in. I went in, and it was my house. And I saw my mom, and I didn't want her to know I'd been using or anything. So I just, I'm trying to think, what do I usually say? Because I couldn't remember who I was. I couldn't remember what I used to say or what I used to do when I walked in. I didn't remember what my house looked like. And I'm like, hi, Mom. I'm going to bed. So I went to my bedroom, and I sat down on the bed, and I took my boots off. Then I took my socks off. Then I took my pants off. And I didn't know how to undress. I forgot, I swear to God, I forgot how to undress. I still had my gloves on. I still had my gloves on. I had my hat on, my coat on. I just started taking my clothes off. Like usually you would take your jacket off. You take your gloves off first, and your hat and your coat. That's how normal people undress. I couldn't remember how to undress. I started undressing from the bottom up. The shoes first, then the socks, then the pants, and the underwear. Well, I'm still wearing a full jacket, and it might sound funny, but when you're going through this, when you're experiencing this, you don't remember the simplest things. I used to tell people, do not look in the mirror if you ever trip. If you ever use, we used to use these things called LSD, purple microdot, or purple double barrel, mescaline, mushrooms. These were the things back in the 80s, and they sound very similar to these designer drugs today. I'll tell you this one other story, and this is a true story. I think it was that same night. I laid down in bed, and your mind just races. I mean, using the term racing mind doesn't even... When I would shut my mind, I would see fantastical things, like I was right there. I remember seeing like the Sphinx in Egypt. And it's like you're having these hallucinations with your eyes closed, and your mind is just exploding with thoughts and racing. So I thought to myself, I need to think, I need to occupy my mind, or I'm going to go nuts laying here in bed, So this is what I did. I tried to think of the most mundane task, like counting sheep, except I thought about doing this. I thought, okay, I'm going to picture a blackboard. This is a totally true story. I'm going to picture a blackboard in my head. And I'll go 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 16 is 256. And I pictured that blackboard, and I carried out these equations. And I think I got up to 65,000 something, 65,556 times 65,656 times each other. I carried it out to like, a 9-digit number in my head. And I got up. Once I completed that, I could still see the blackboard. And I wrote the number down, and I used a calculator the next morning, and that number was right. That number was right. It was some fantastical stuff, but it took a toll. It took a big toll, and it might have changed who I am forever. I would never recommend touching any of these substances. They for all these things that you use, for anything good that comes out of it, there's going to be a price. A lot of times a big price.